So he keeps saying Almighty Allah. Now, you know, we speak Assyrian, we say Allah.
Allah.
Or Allah.
Allah.
So he got me interested. So I said, can I ask you a question? How do you know this term? So he started talking about Minister Louis Farrakhan. I have no idea what this guy's talking about. Then he says, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, and then he mentions Master Farad Muhammad. Now I'm thinking it's the same Muhammad. Turns out he's a member of the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam, who's, now the leader is still alive. Louis Farrakhan hasn't passed away. There he goes. One of the most powerful, charismatic speakers. This man will captivate you. And he does it from memory. He doesn't have notes in front of him. He'll quote the Bible Quran from memory. This man is amazing in his recall and his speech, so captivating. And he mentioned the Quran, so I asked, could you give me a copy? Well, I read the Quran and I was flabbergasted because here's a book that mentions the major prophets of the Bible and Jesus, but it gives a different spin on it. So I got really confused. So in the back of the book, you have like, you know, table of contents, not table, I'm sorry, index of names. So I went look for Jesus in every place that Jesus showed up in the Quran. And I believe the translation was Abdullah Yusuf Ali. At that time, it was the most popular Quran translation. Now it's obsolete. But in the 90s, this was the translation that Muslims would give out. And he's got copious notes, right, to indoctrinate you. Man, I ate it up. I was shocked to find Jesus in the Quran. And this is one thing that non-Muslims, when they encounter Islam, the shock effect. Because they think Muslims are the other side, they're all evil, they're terrorists. And then they find out that they have more in common with Christianity than even Judaism does. This is a fact. Islam is closer to Christianity than Judaism because Islam recognizes Jesus. It says he's the Messiah, born of the Virgin. In fact, the Quran says that the greatest woman Allah created is Mary. And she's the only woman mentioned by name in the entire Quran. Women aren't mentioned. So if we're looking at
his mom, not even the Prophet's mom.
No, yeah. Muhammad's parents, you don't even know whose parents are. You don't even know his historical context. If you just go with the Quran, it doesn't even situate the Quran for you. You don't know what century is this. All you know it's in Arabic. But when was it sent down? You need external sources. Even when Muhammad was born, you need external sources because Muhammad is mentioned by name 4 times. But even then you can make a case that it's not really the name of a prophet, but it's a descriptive noun, meaning the praised one. Mm-hmm. And some people actually postulate that what you have in the Quran is actually Christian hymns that were then bastardized into Arabic, originally in Syriac. A lot of theories. Some of the theories are strong. So again, as I read the Quran, I got baffled. But here's where training your children in the way to go pays dividends. Because of that young boy teaching me the Christian faith, planting seeds in my heart, my reaction was to go back to the New Testament. I go, wait, let me read the New Testament. And I remember reading it. Man, I fell in love with Jesus all over again. In fact, I missed him. You know, I missed him. I'm not supposed to cry. I'm Jidu. You know that, right?
The warrior showing us all side.
Jesus makes even the toughest of men cry like babies because he's infinitely beautiful and we are infinitely less and filthy. But as I read the New Testament, I fell in love with him all over again. There's no one like Jesus. Even those who do not believe in religion, when they read, for example, the Sermon of the Mount, they're in awe of his message. They even realize this is not human. This is heavenly. The way he teaches about to treat your enemies, and this is something out of this world, and it is. It's not from this world. It's from a higher realm, heaven. I fell in love with him, but then I had a problem. What do I do with Muhammad? Because I was convinced Muhammad was a true prophet because he was sincere. They gave me a biography because then I forgot to add the details. Then I discovered Malcolm X. I forgot to mention that because Malcolm X is a big figure in the Nation of Islam.
Farrakhan, yes.
Yep. He was the one who pretty much made the Nation of Islam, but then he realized that Elijah Muhammad, who was the man who claimed that Master Farad Muhammad sent him. So there was a man named Master Farad Muhammad, and he went to Elijah, whose name was Elijah Poole in Michigan, and he said, pretty much, I want to appoint you as a prophet to liberate my people. And this theology teaches that Allah is a black man. So it's not Islamic. You go to a predominant Muslim country that practices, you tell them Allah is a black man, your body's going to be over here, and your head will be over there on a trophy. So this is but I didn't know. So I started reading Malcolm X, and then Alex Haley, his autobiography by Alex Haley. I didn't understand a lot of the code terms because he kept saying them, T-H-E-M in the book. Then I realized it was an abbreviation for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But his story captivated me because supposedly on a trip to Mecca, he discovered true Islam. And I thought, man, if Islam could do for this guy, or if Islam could do for me what it did for this guy, maybe Islam is a solution. But that's when I went back to the New Testament. The Lord saved me. But I had read a sanitized biography on Muhammad that made him look very, very devout, sincere. And so I didn't know what to do with him, because if he's sincere and he's willing to suffer for his claims, then obviously he's not lying. But what he says about Jesus contradicts what the New Testament says. How do I reconcile that? It took me maybe 2 years to finally, and I know it's not a politically correct message, but it is what it is. That's why Islam is not Christianity. Christianity is not Islam. We're not the same. We have differences. So Islam thinks that Christianity has been perverted, corrupted. The New Testament has been changed. We believe that there are many antichrists who will come into the world. I know Muslims will get offended, but it is what it is. Jesus in John 14:6 explicitly says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. He didn't say I'm one of many ways. I point you to the life, and I can bring you to the Father among many. He goes, no, I am the truth, the life. Now, even from an Islamic perspective, no prophet can say he's the truth, the life, because Islam recognizes those titles as belonging only to the God of Islam, which they believe is the God of Abraham. So for Jesus to say he's the truth, he just claimed to be more than a man from an Islamic perspective. To say you're the life, he just claimed to be more than a man. And he says, you want to get to the Father, you want to be with me, you want to dwell with me, you better come to me and accept me as I am. But the Jesus of the New Testament, who's the Christ of history, is not a Muslim prophet. His name is not Isa ibn Maryam. He did not announce the coming of Ahmed, because the Quran says in chapter 61, verse 6, that the good news of Jesus is that he announced the coming of a messenger after him named Ahmed. That's in 61, verse 6 of the Quran. You guys can see it. So if you ask the Muslim, what is the gospel of Christ? Oh, he predicted the coming of Muhammad. That's 61, verse 6. If you want to see it.
Rob, can you pull it up? 61, verse 6 in the Quran.
Yeah. There you go. And remember when Jesus, son of Mary, said, O children of Israel, I'm Allah, truly Allah's messenger to you, confirming the Torah which came before me, and giving good news of a messenger after me whose name will be Ahmed. That's the good news of Islam. He prepared you for Muhammad, because Ahmed is another name for Muhammad, right? That's what they tell you. So that's their good news. That's not the Jesus of history. The Jesus of history claims to be the very God in such a way that even the Quran acknowledges no man can claim the titles he claimed. When I said that one of the names of Allah is the truth, al-haq, and he is the life, and he's also the first and the last. Well, if you go to chapter 22, verse 6 to 7, there you're going to see the names of Allah pretty much plagiarized from what Jesus said prior to the Quran. You'd think, if I didn't tell you this is Allah speaking, you think that you're reading the Gospel of John, because what is said about God here, the Allah of Islam, is exactly parroted from what Jesus says in the Gospel of John, which comes 600 years earlier. Here, you'll see it. So chapter 22, verse 6 to 7 says, that is because Allah is the truth. Al-Haq, that's one of the names of Allah. And because he gives life to the dead. And because he is over all things competent. Now, here's an interesting part in verse 7. And that the hour is coming, no doubt about it, that Allah will resurrect those in the grave. See, only Allah gives life and resurrects the dead, and he's the truth. Well, if I go to the Gospel of John, chapter 5, Jesus said all those things, but he applied it to himself. If you open up John chapter 5, you're going to have to open up the entire chapter, because we're going to look at verse 21. So now watch here. Now watch Jesus say what the Quran says of Allah, but he says it 600 years before Muhammad showed up. So who's plagiarizing whom? It's not Jesus plagiarizing Allah. Now watch here. If he goes to John 5, I'll open it up.
Verse 21?
Yeah, we're going to open up the entire chapter, if you can. If you go to BibleGateway.com, you're going to find Bibles galore. You mean I'm moving faster than the great Rob? What happened, Rob, brother? See, you can't keep up with the Assyrians, especially if he's Jilu, you know? Now, if you open up John 5, just put John 5, it's going to open up. Now, remember what it said of Allah, he's the truth, he gives life.
Yes.
And then the hour is coming where he will raise
Sounds
the dead.
familiar.
Oh, no, watch here. John 5:21. Watch here. Well, let's go here. 21. Now watch.
Right in the middle.
For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it. So Father and Son both give life. But in 25, if you watch verse 25, verily, truly I tell you. Now, this translation, NIV, says a time. The literal translation is an hour is coming. If you read it, it's an hour, because NIV is more of a paraphrase. So some Bibles do not translate literally, because in translating literally, you lose meaning. So they have to paraphrase. So this is a paraphrase. In fact, we Assyrians can relate. If I say, Atma Brishuch, if you translate in English, you're going to say, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how it is with languages. So sometimes you can't translate literally. You got to translate meaning. But literally it says, very truly I tell you, an hour is coming and has now come when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, not Allah. The Son of God, and those who hear will live. Now 28:29 says something amazing, because the Quran says, the hour is coming, have no doubt about it, well, Allah will raise them from their graves. But who does that according to our Bible? Do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out. Whose voice? The Son of God. So if I were to compare what Jesus says of himself with what was said about Allah, clearly Jesus claimed to be God, because the things Jesus says is ascribed to the Islamic deity, not to a prophet. So a prophet cannot speak this way if Islam is true. So what did they tell you? Your Bible's corrupt. Another passage, John, you brought it up, John 14:6, right? We read that. I'm sorry. Notice there he says, I am the way and the truth, one of the names of Allah, and the life. So clearly the Jesus of history is not Isa. He did not announce coming Muhammad. So from a Christian perspective, as offensive as it may be, facts are facts. If we all believe the same thing, we'd be the same religion. According to the New Testament, it's going to hurt people. Muhammad is an antichrist. That's the New Testament teaching. Because what is the criteria for an antichrist? 1 John chapter 2, 22 to 23 tells you. Who is the antichrist? He who denies the Father and the Son. Islam says Allah is not a father, and Jesus is definitely not his son. In fact, in chapter 9 of the Quran, verse 30, you know what it says? And the Jews say, Uzair is the son of Allah. To this day, scholars are baffled. Who is this Uzair? And what Jew said it? Now, some translations will tell you that Uzair is Ezra, the prophet, but the context is the call to jihad. A lot of people don't know that one of the last chapters before Muhammad died. Now, again, we're basing this on the Muslim sources. There are people who question the Muslim sources.